Hey everybody, it's the day after election, and we should know who won. But we don't. Because not all of the ballots have been counted. It used to be that we could find out who won an election the day after the election. Somehow Miami-Dade, the most populous county or area in Florida, was able to count all of their votes in an evening, but maybe John Fetterman is doing the vote counting in Pennsylvania. And maybe he's helping out in Arizona too. So, from the AP News today, mishaps, distrust, spur, election day misinformation, by David Klepper. This is a terrible article, and it's not a terrible article because, well, their bias is showing. It's like they unzipped their pants and they're letting all their bias out. So before I read on with the news, please go down and give me a like. So you can help me in the algorithm, and be sure to subscribe and click the bell so that you can be notified most of the time when a new video comes out. I did a video about Nancy Pelosi quitting because of DePape beating her hubby over the head with a hammer, but my alternate channel didn't get that notification, so I wasn't even notified for my own video, which is really weird. So maybe it was the subject matter. Maybe this one will be shadow banned by YouTube. So, mishaps, distrust, spur, election day misinformation. Voters casting ballots on Tuesday's pivotal midterms grappled with misleading claims about glitchy election machines and delayed results, the final crest of a wave of misinformation that's expected to linger long after the last votes are tallied. Yes, we don't trust you. In Arizona, news of snags with vote tabulators spawned claims. They're saying spawned baseless claims about vote rigging, which quickly jumped from fringe sites, popular with the far right, to mainstream platforms. No, we all saw it on YouTube. I saw it on YouTube before I saw the news cover it. And, yeah, okay. It didn't matter that local officials were quick to report the problem and debunk the theory. They didn't debunk any theory. They just said 20 to 25% of your Arizona ballots aren't going to be counted because this machine doesn't work. These ballots can't leave the building. Did you not test the machines the day before? Moving on. In Pennsylvania, election officials pushed back on, again they use baseless claims, on claims that delays in counting the vote equate to election fraud. They need to find out how many votes they need to count in order to beat a Republican. Yeah. But the conspiracy theory spread anyway, thanks in part to former President Donald Trump, Senator Ted Cruz, and other prominent Republicans who have amplified the idea. No, everybody on Twitter, regardless of Trump, Cruz, and other prominent Republicans, was expecting Democrats to cheat because they've done it before. There was lots of other misinformation, too. False claims about ballots cast by non-citizens or pre-filled registration forms, hoaxes about voting machines, and tales of suspicious Wi-Fi networks at election offices. Again, every 2 years this happens. There are claims about ballots being cast by non-citizens or pre-filled registration forms, voting machine issues, suspicious Wi-Fi problems, crazy things going at election offices, crazy things showing up at campaign headquarters every 2 years. So don't put out that this is false claims. It's claims. These things happen. These hoax about voting machines and voting machines are easy to hack. When a Republican wins, apparently they were easy to hack. But when a Democrat wins, these voting machines are not susceptible to any harm, because KJP said so. Okay. In some cases, the claims provoked responses, including calls for violence against local officials. I haven't seen any of that on Twitter, but that might be because Twitter is also still censoring what they deem to be wrong thinking. Moving on. The states and facts involved were all different, but most of the information aimed at voters this last year. Sorry, let me start that all over. The states and facts involved were all different, but most of the misinformation aimed at voters this year had the same drumbeat. American elections can no longer be trusted. Why is that misinformation? This is not misinformation. If any of you stayed up last night to watch the election, you know that this is not misinformation. American elections can no longer be trusted. We've watched it get rigged twice now. People were looking for things to go wrong to prove their preconceived notions that the election was rigged, said Brett Schaefer, a senior fellow at the Alliance for Securing Democracy, a Washington, D.C.-based nonpartisan organization that tracks misinformation. And there are always things that go wrong, especially in blue cities. If 2020 is any guide, Many of the claims they... Ugh, I can't read it word for word if you guys screw up and grammatically mess up your own articles. Okay, let me try. If 2020 is any guide, many of the claims the emerged Tuesday will persist for days, weeks, and even years, despite efforts by election officials, journalists, and others to debunk them. So, others, those are the liberal blue check marks, journalists, or Operation Mockingbird assets, and election officials, people like KJP, who's just going to say, there's no such thing as fraud happening when Democrats win. I did a video about that. There will be a link up here somewhere, maybe, if I remember to do that when I get to that point of the video. If I finish the video, there was a sharp uptick in social media posts on Monday and Tuesday claiming Democrats would use delays in vote tallying to rig elections throughout the country. According to the site intelligence group, a firm that tracks disinformation. No, they just track posts. How do we know they just track disinformation? Because there's no link to cite here. I'm going to get to another one that doesn't have a link in a second. Some of the posts originated on websites popular with Trump supporters and adherents of the baseless QAnon conspiracy theory. It's funny how they can talk about QAnon being a baseless conspiracy theory, but then they'll talk about CRT, but they won't put a baseless CRT. Interesting. The increased popularity of mail ballots is one reason why results can take a while. Excuses. In key battleground states like Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Arizona, election officials cannot begin counting mail-in ballots until Election Day, guaranteeing delays. Interesting. We have never certified an election on election night, said Sylvia Albert, Director of Voting and Elections for Common Cause, a nonprofit group that has been tracking election misinformation. This is nothing new, it's just people trying to undermine faith in elections. No, we have had elections finished in a night, counted in a night. Somehow, when we just started mailing ballots in mass to any address and to any name in the area, and maybe even dead people, and people in out of state get to vote twice in 2 elections, that never happens, but there's been plenty of videos posted about that sort of thing happening. Misinformation about voting in elections has been blamed for a widening political divide, decreased trust in democracy, and an increased threat of political violence like, really, January 6, 2021, attack on the U.S. Capitol. Really, but they aren't going to mention the increased threat of political violence like the Supreme Court justice having a dude show up trying to kill him. What about the Summer of Love? What about the Chaz shootings? What about the mostly peaceful but on-fire protests? What about defunding the police and burning down police stations and trying to burn down the church? Yeah, Trump cleared him out because he wanted to do a photo op at the church that was being burned down by the left. Okay, moving on. The same... I don't know if I want to put false claims. The same claims fueled the campaign of candidates. Let me try it again. The same claims fueled the campaigns of candidates who reject the outcome of the 2020 election, including Republican gubernatorial candidates Kari Lake in Arizona and Doug Mastriano in Pennsylvania. Several GOP nominees for Secretary of State positions overseeing elections have also said they supported Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election and remain in power, which we would not be in this boat right now if he were still in power. Though not on the ballot, Trump helped spread many of the leading false claims on Tuesday. Using his Truth Social platform, he amplified the conspiracy theories from Pennsylvania and Arizona. Another big voter tabulation problem in Arizona, he wrote. Sound familiar? Yeah, it does. Yeah, it really does. I'm not going to read that word there. The claims seen in 2020 are likely to stick around and become part of the information facing voters in the presidential election, said Morgan Wack, a University of Washington disinformation researcher and part of the Election Integrity Partnership, a collaborative research group focused on election. That is a really long title. That is a really long title, Morgan. And I'm just going to call you Morgan. Morgan says false claims seen in 2020 are likely to stick around and show up in 2024. There, I shortened it for you, AP. We will almost certainly see this again in 2024. Yeah, see, I said all of that crap really shorter in this sentence without even reading down that far. Most major social media platforms announced plans to combat election information and provide voting resources to users. It was a different story on the fringe platforms like Gab, where misinformation and even threats of violence were easy to spot Tuesday. Twitter was a particular concern to disinformation researchers given its... Oh, God, come on, people. Twitter was a particular concern to disinformation researchers, given its new owner, Elon Musk, a self-described free speech absolutist. absolutist who has spread misinformation himself. Maybe I'll open that up and check it out. One analysis of bots and fake accounts on Twitter found a significant increase in discussion of election fraud in the week before the election, because we knew Dems were going to do it. The number of automated or fake accounts posting about stolen elections doubled in the sample reviewed by researchers at Kyabra, an Israeli tech firm, but there's no link to them or the data there, so who knows? Officials with the Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Infrastructure Security Agency, that's all one agency, said Tuesday, and they're unnamed, said Tuesday they were monitoring for foreign attempts to sow doubt about the election, but saw no evidence the efforts were paying off. That's because so many of those doubting the election integrity and such were domestic. You didn't need foreigners to make people not trust you. Russia, China, and Iran have all mounted disinformation operations targeting U.S. politics and will likely increase their efforts ahead of the 2024. According to Craig, Director of Global Issues at said Massachusetts-based cybersecurity for Recorded Future. Craig said the Kremlin likely sees such meddling as justified given U.S. support for Ukraine following the Russian invasion. Immediately after the U.S. midterm elections and into 2023 and beyond, the Russian government will very likely attempt to plan and execute malign influence efforts, Craig wrote in an email to the AP. In particular, we expect to see campaigns aimed at undermining the next 2 years of President Biden's term. You're going to tell me that Russia, China, and Iran are all going to do stuff, but these cybersecurity people said that they were monitoring and saw no evidence that it was paying off. So why even bring this up? It just seems stupid. I mean, Americans don't trust you enough. So now we have extra reason not to trust in elections because Russia and Iran and folks are chiming in. So, yeah, you're not helping the case. Anyways, that's it for this one. Hopefully tomorrow we'll all know the results. Hopefully. All right, I'm done.